matter what, we come together for the good of our constituents, and I'm proud and honored to lead the People's House of the New York State Legislature.
The health and protection of the human beings that live in our districts is our responsibility.
Frederick Douglass's words for us today, I quote, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress."
If you want equity to happen, then this is where it happens.
All of us have a responsibility to the greater good.
The House will come to order.
Hello and welcome to Assembly Update. We are right in the middle of budget season and we have prepared the one House budgets. The governor has prepared her budget, and now it's just time to figure out how to compromise on the two of them. With us today to discuss that, we have Assemblyman Dinowitz representing the 81st District in the Bronx. Assemblyman, thank you very much for joining us.
It is great to be here right after the storm that never really happened in Albany.
Absolutely. Now, can you tell us a bit about, broadly speaking, what proposals you are in favor of or opposed to in the governor's budget?
Well, so 95% of the budget everybody agrees on. So the disagreements is that's what we talk about. Today, when we're taping this show, it's March 15th, the Ides of March, and the budget is due at the end of March. So we really have like 2.5 weeks to get all this done. Seems like a very difficult task to get everything done because there are differences on some key issues. On some issues, the Assembly has generally taken the stance that things that are not directly budget related shouldn't be in the budget. They can be handled as standalone issues after we do the budget. I mean, with exceptions, of course. For example, the governor has proposals to further change the rules on bail reform, which has been, excuse me, a controversial issue. And neither the Assembly nor the Senate puts that into our one House budget resolutions. If for no other reason, then that's something which should be discussed, maybe negotiated, during the remaining weeks of session after the budget is done. And the fact that crime is going down kind of makes it look like the arguments made by those people who say that bail reform is what caused crime to go up. It makes those arguments look a little ridiculous, but you know, who knows what all the reasons are why crime went up or down. My own personal belief is that it had much to do with the pandemic, because crime went up exactly when the pandemic took hold. And now that the pandemic seems to be abating, crime is going down. Coincidence? I think not. But, you know, I'm certainly not an expert on that, but we have to look at all these issues. And yes, discussion of bail reform is a very legitimate discussion to have. Another issue which the governor proposed in her budget concerns charter schools. When the charter school law was passed almost 25 years ago now, it provided for a cap on the number of charter schools that can be established in the state, and within that, a cap for New York City. And what the governor wants is to lift that New York City cap. And the number of charter schools in New York City, I think it's in 270, that's an approximate number, I think. And the limit is 300. Well, we're not even near the cap, so why we even have to address the issue is beyond me. But charter schools have found all kinds of ways to evade the cap, and that's my word, evade. For example, there's a charter school right near my office. It's a 9 through 12 high school, and now they are expanding to include middle school. Well, that's not an additional charter. As far as I know, they're just expanding their school. So number one, I don't think the lifting the cap is necessary. And number two, I don't think it's justified. We have plenty of charter schools. Why this mad rush to establish more charter schools, which are often heavily financed by wealthy people in the private sector, is beyond me. But in any case, it's still not a budget issue. So in our one House budget resolution, as well as the Senate, that's not in there. So whether that can be negotiated or not, time will tell. We do have 2.5 weeks. But since both the Senate and the Assembly don't want to do that, I think that's going to be a tough one from the governor's point of view. So those are two non-budget issues among many that the governor has put into her executive budget proposal. And we'll see what happens in the next few weeks on those two issues.
Absolutely. Shifting the focus to taxes, whether there's new ones that you want to institute or ones that we want to sort of take down, can you talk a bit more about those?
Sure. We want to extend an increase from a few years ago in tax on corporations, which I think is very appropriate. And we also want to raise the taxes on the super wealthy, people whose incomes are many, many millions of dollars a year, and raising the rates that they pay by 0.5 point. That's 1/2, so that's a penny, 1/2 penny on every dollar. That's 0.5%. And it will generate a good amount of money that we hope can be used to help resolve issues concerning the MTA. And I hope that the governor would agree to this, because we want to solve the problems facing the MTA. The MTA has huge capital costs, as well as in this case huge operating costs, which and their problems have been exacerbated by the significant decline in ridership as a result of the pandemic. The numbers just haven't gotten back to where they used to be yet, and hopefully they will, but we don't know that. And so to make up for some of that lost revenue, we have to find other ways to do it. What the governor proposed was to increase a tax that was instituted some years ago, and it's basically a payroll tax for the metropolitan area, for the MTA region, to help fund the MTA. But of course, as would normally be the case, some of our colleagues in the suburbs, were very upset by that. So we came up with a different way to do it. Personally, I didn't have a problem with that, nor would I have a problem with bringing back the commuter tax. But again, the people in the suburbs would be strongly opposed to that. But we have to fund the MTA. Our economy depends upon it, and we really have no choice. The operating expenses compared to the amount of money they have, the gap is projected to widen each year, and it's not sustainable. Our trains and buses, that's, as I say, that's the lifeblood of New York.
Absolutely. Can you talk a bit more about, I know there are some programs that people were hoping would be funded at sort of a higher level that weren't necessarily. Can you speak a bit more about any of those?
Programs that were funded at a higher level. First of all, the governor, and I'm happy with it, she wants to fund education at a higher level than last year, at a good level, in fact. And of course, we want to do even better. For many years, schools were underfunded. We're finally going to be, now adhering to the mandates of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity court decision. Over the years, schools like schools in New York City were severely underfunded. High needs districts were underfunded. And so it takes a lot of time to make up for that. But the real issue we're facing, and everybody's facing all over the country, is the damage caused during the pandemic to education. Kids have fallen behind in reading, and especially in math. And I believe that we have to really focus heavily on math. So things cost money. People say, well, why does it cost so much money? Money's wasted. No doubt money is wasted. Why do charter schools do some things for less? Well, partially because they're heavily funded, because they get a lot of outside rich people contributions in many cases, and because they're not, in almost all cases, they're not unionized, so their costs are lower. For those of us who believe in unions, that's not an option to not have union workers in our facilities. So, but we do have to continue to focus on dealing with the money that's necessary for kids, particularly kids who've been in areas that have been shortchanged, and because of the pandemic, the needs are even higher than ever.
Definitely. On that topic, there's been a lot of discussion about the repeal of certain SNAP benefits that went into place during the pandemic. Can you talk a bit more about maybe any plans to expand those at the state level or something like that?
Well, I think we need to talk about that. the increase in SNAP benefits was always meant to be temporary. But, having said that, SNAP is I wish we can indefinitely continue that, because it's important that there are a lot of people who are, who don't get enough food, basically. That's why we want to make sure that kids get lunch, all kids get lunch and breakfast at school. There are so many kids in particular, but also, older people. The suffering from the pandemic, first of all, it's still here. COVID is still here. But beyond that, the suffering didn't just end like that simply because the numbers went down. There were still several hundred people a day dying around the country, including people in New York. I look at the numbers every single day. And so right now in New York State, each day, 12 people died, 17 people died. Those are the numbers, much less than what it was at the height of the pandemic, thankfully. But still, people are dying, mostly older people. And of the people who are dying, a disproportionate number, of course, are not vaccinated. But, that's not an argument you can win with people who don't believe in vaccinations. They believe what they believe. But we still have tremendous needs. So all these things need to be talked about.
Mm-hmm. And finally, is there anything that you are particularly hoping that will for sure be passed in the budget, or anything that you really want to prioritize to get through?
I think that one area, which it's a general area, but I think we have to make sure we do the right thing in the various topics within healthcare, because the disparities in healthcare, the lack of coverage from so many people was brutally exposed during the pandemic, and the numbers show it. The areas where there's a lower rate of healthcare coverage, more people are dying. It's really that simple. There's no mystery to it, and I think we have to take the various steps in the budget, that some of which the governor's proposed, some of which we're proposing contrary to the governor's position on healthcare. But to me, it's all about saving lives. And there's one last thing that it's unfortunately not in the Assembly proposal at the moment, but it concerns my climate change Superfund legislation, which technically is also not a budget issue. It's in the Senate One House resolution, but it's something which we could pass later on in the session, and it involves essentially making the polluters pay, not taxing anybody, making the polluters, meaning oil companies, pay for the damage they cause, just like in the past we made the cigarette companies pay for the damage they caused. And it's really an important issue, perhaps the most important issue, and I'm hoping we can accomplish that at some point very, very soon.
Absolutely. Well, Assemblyman, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with you about this, and we hope to hear from you very soon.
Okay. I hope we get this done on time.
Yep, absolutely.